I'm Dr. Nalini Avinash Wagmare, working as an assistant professor at Kirat Maharashtra Vidyapith. Today's our topic is related to concepts of medieval India, because various concepts in medieval India, basically while we are studying the Mughal history, Maratha history, as well as Cholas, Vijayanagara, Bahmani, Delhi Sultan Shahi, some concepts are very essential to understand those things. And while after clearing this concept, easily we understand the remaining things. So here, very briefly, I am going to introduce this concept for easy understanding of medieval Indian history. So first point related to concept, in these concepts of medieval India, we have to study Jagirdari system, Mansabdari system, Deen-e-Ilahi, as well as Ashtapradhan Mandal, Mughal state, Bhakti, in short, Bhakti meaning Sufism, and other, even Chauthai, Sir Deshmukhi system. These things we have to study very briefly in this lecture. So first of all, we go to the study related to Jagirdari system. What is the Jagirdari system? What is the meaning of Jagirdari system? In which time this was existing? So the system was introduced in India by the early sultanates of Delhi. Because in Delhi Sultan Shahi, we have to study slave dynasty, Tughlaq dynasty, Khilji dynasty, Sayyid dynasty, and Lodi dynasty. This all five dynasty comes under the Delhi Sultan Shahi. So in the early Sultan Shahi's time, this Jagirdari system was introduced. According to this system, an officer was paid not in cash, but with the right of administrating and collecting the revenue of a landed property called a Jagir. Jagir means a land. So that time cash is not given. A person appointed, you collect revenue. You are appointed as a Jagirdar, collect revenue from the people. So it was a feudalistic in character and tended to weaken the central government. It was therefore checked by Sultan Ghiyas, later on Balban, but abolished by Sultan Alauddin Khilji, but was reintroduced by Sultan Firoz Shah Tughlaq and continued in later times. Sher Shah and Akbar were both opposed to it and wanted its abolition and substitution by a system of payment to officers in cash instead of allowing them to in the form of land. But the system was revised under the later Mughal emperors and contributed much to their weakness and decline. Because later on people would get the Jagir and became a superior and they're not helping the rulers. So later on the system became as a weaker one. Then Mansabdari system. So what is the meaning of Mansabdari? Who introduced this Mansabdari system? What is the features of this Mansabdari system? Then how it is helpful in the time of the Mughals? So we have to study here. The Mughal organization was called Mansabdari system. The word Mansab means rank, place, or status. The Mansabdars were therefore holders of rank in imperial service. This system was regulated by Akbar, who made it as scientific as it could be. So in the time of the Akbar, this system was continued one. Mansabdar was one who held a mansab or official appointment in Mughal India from the time of Emperor Akbar. So in the time of Akbar period, this Mansabdar system was introduced. The Mansabdar held an office of a rank and profit, and as such was to supply number of troops for the military service of the state. For this Mansabdar helped to the ruler in the time of the war and other things. So that's why this system was introduced at that time. The Mansabdars formed the Mughal bureaucracy on military line. Akbar introduced and systemized this organization. All officers, civil as well as military, were classified into 33 grades, ranging from commanders of 10 to commanders of 10,000, with salaries which varied according to the strength of command. So already, first of all, we think that Mansab means a rank, place, or status. So here the status 10 to up to the 10,000, the officers are paid. The highest grades of commanders of 7,000, 8,000, and 10,000 were resecured for the royal princes. The Mansabdars were directly recruited, promoted, suspended, or dismissed by the emperor. This is the main features of the Mansabdar, because these are appointed by the ruler. If the Mansabdar not doing work well, the ruler have authority to remove them. They appointed another ruler. So this Mansabdar system is not a hereditary one. On the base, their work, whatever work assigned to them, if they are doing good, they are continue. If they are not doing, then in the hands of the ruler, they dismiss that person anytime or suspend him from the that work anytime. So main authority in the hands of the emperor. The definite rate of pay was fixed for each grade, and out of this denomination, each Mansabdar was required to maintain a certain number of troops, elephants, beasts of burden. But the Mansabdar rarely fulfilled this condition. In order to check fraudulent practices, Akbar used to brand their horses and introduce in the 11th year of his reign a double system of ranking, Jat and Sawar. The first denoting the personal rank of Mansabdar and the second indicating the actual number of effective soldiers this he must be maintained. So Akbar, for identified those things, he introduced two systems, Jat and Sawar. So first one is personal rank of the Mansabdar, second one how much soldiers he have, horses he actually have in his authority. The Mansabdari dignity was not hereditary, nor it did depend on this specialization. The Mansabdars were highly paid, and it has been estimated that after deducting all expenses for maintaining the required numbers of troops, a Mansabdar of 500 got a net monthly income of rupees 1,000, which was as high as 18,000 in case of a Mansabdar of 10,000. So Akbar preferred to pay the Mansabdar in cash, but the system of paying them with jagirs, with incomes equivalent to their rank pay, can be introduced in later times. This development tended to weaken the Mughal system of government. While we are studying the failures of Mughal dynasty, we have to study this one. Then another system we call as the concept of that medieval period is jizya system. Emperor Akbar earned the goodwill of Hindus by abolishing it in 1564. But it was reimposed by Aurangzeb in 1679. Then what is the jizya system? So this act of intolerance caused by widespread discontent among the Hindus and lead to prolonged war between Aurangzeb and Rajput, as the result of which its collection had to be dropped by the Aurangzeb only so far as Mewar was concerned. Actually, what is jizya system? This system, the Muslim rulers imposed this tax on non-Muslims, or we can say Hindus. So here the Akbar, it was abolished, but later on Aurangzeb introduced this one. So non-Muslims has to pay this tax to the government. That is called as a jizya system. It was, however, abolished by Emperor Farrukhsiyar on his accession in 1713, but was reimposed by him in 1770. Thereafter, its levy continued to be theoretically legal, but in practice, its collection was discontinued from the time of Emperor Muhammad Shah. The total yield under this tax was substantial when the control of Delhi was effective, but in the days of the later Mughals, this must have considerably decreased. In any case, it was an indigenous tax, and the obligation to pay it was always resented by the Hindus, because it's a those who are not those who are Hindus, they have to pay this tax. The Muslims are exempted from this tax. This act of intolerance caused widespread discontentment amongst the Hindus and led to a prolonged war between Aurangzeb and the Rajput, as the result of which its collection had to be dropped by Aurangzeb only so far as Mewar was concerned. It was, however, abolished by Emperor Farrukhsiyar on his accession. Already I explained this point. Then we go to the another text that is called another concept that is existing in Maratha period. That concept is Watandari system. Let's see what is Watandari system. Watan means land or native place. If somebody today asks you are belong to which place, it means which Watan, or a Indian or a foreigner or a European. So that time also, actually the meaning of Watan is land or native place in simple language. Watan holders called as Watandars. Most of these Watandars existed in Maratha period. Shivaji put some restriction on this Watandars system. So it is merely a language of common convention that Deshkarnis, Patvardhans, and other hereditary right holders are to be called as Watandars. Those who are this Patvardhans, Deshmukhs, or Deshpurkarnis, they are called as Watandars. They are no doubt small but independent chiefs of territories. The weak managed to exist by rigidly maintaining the tradition of power, though decreasing from the emperor downwards, but they are not to be considered as ordinary persons. They are not inclined to live on whatever Vatan they possess, or always act loyally towards the king who is the lord of the whole country, and to abstain from committing wrong against anyone. So this Watandari system is that all the time they wanted to acquire new position bit by bit and to become strong. And after becoming strong, their ambition is to be seized forcibly from some and to create enmities and deprecations against others. Knowing that royal punishment will fall on them, they first take refuge with others, fortify their places with their help, rob the traveler, loot the territories, and fight desperately, not caring even their lives. When a foreign invasion comes, they make peace with the inventor with a desire for gaining or protecting the Vatan. So this was existing at the time in Maratha state basically. Meet personally the enemy, allow the enemy to enter the kingdom by secrets treaty with them, and then becoming for harmful to the kingdom to get to be difficult of control. For this reason, the control of these people has to be very cleverly devised. So they are independent chief officers. So whenever a foreigner attack on their land, they protect their watans. They have treaty with them, and they are neglecting their original duty to native land or native ruler. That was the defect we find in the system. Then king's policy towards Watandar. Basically, the Shivaji period, he adopted few policies to suppress the powers of the Watandars. But because these faults are found in them, it would be great injustice that they should be hated and that their Watan should be discontinued. And on special occasions, it would prove cause of calamity. If on the contrary, that is not done and these people are given freedom of movement, their natural wild spirit would immediately find play. Therefore, neither of these extreme attitudes can be useful in the interest of the state policy. They have to be kept positively between the consolation and punishment. Their existing Vatan should be continued, but their power over the people should be done away with. That was checked by the Shivaji in his time. They should not be allowed to have any privileges or Vatan rights without a state charter. That was controlled the Vatandars. Otherwise, they sign the treaty with the enemy or we are taken that. Whatever has come down to them from the past should not be allowed to increase, not to become less even by a little, and they should be made to obey the orders of the authorities of the territory. A group of king's men or agents should not be allowed to remain jointly on the Vatan. After making inquiries, their kinsmen and agents should each be kept in distant provinces along with their families by giving them work according to their ability. Again, they should not be allowed to get absorbed in their Vatans. Vatandars should not be allowed to build strong houses and castles. If by chance there is found anyone overbearing, he should be praised and sent to do that work which is difficult of achievements. In that, if he succeed or he is ruined, both the events would be in the king's interest. If he is saved, he should be given more difficult work. Patandars should not be allowed to quarrel amongst themselves. They should be well flattered, but there are established usages for their behavior and they should not be allowed to transgress even a little. Any infringement should bring immediate punishment. Looking to the position of watandars and establishing every year or two proper relation with them, a king should weaken them by taking a little tribute and other things from them. So this was for checking the works of or rights of the watandars. When a watandar has inflicted and duties of his station in near him, a king should speak about him to other servants that he is virtuous, honest, and attached to him. And similar those words which would give encouragement to them. It's not it means only punishment. If a good watandar doing good work, he was appreciated by the ruler appreciated to him. Therefore, such watandars should be gathered with great care. Favor should be bestowed on them. Respect should be shown to them. Royal service should be entrusted to them. May they should be kept to do important work. Ajna Patra explains more about the Vatandar's works and other things. Then another system or concept that existing in our topic medieval period when we are studying Maratha history, that is Chauthai. So what is this Chauthai? Another source of income of Shivaji was that of money realized from Chauthai. Shivaji realized 1/4 of land rent from the territories which were not directly under his control, but which were protected by the Marathas. If Shivaji conquered some places, that time the ruler, the territory people give 1/4 tax to the Shivaji king. Chauthai signified the right of the Maratha king to realize in territories outside the Swaraj or the original kingdom of Shivaji 1/4 of the total revenue collected. This right arose out of the necessity felt by the Marathas of securing provisions for their troops sent on campaign outside the kingdom. As the Marathas began to collect money from those people, they felt it highly troublesome or vexatious, and in order to avoid such situation, an agreement was hammered out by which the people outside Swaraj were to pay one-fourth of the total revenue to the Marathas for the maintenance of their troops, and the Marathas in their turn were to undertake to defend such provinces from outside aggression. To protect the other aggressor invasion on the territory, for these Marathas protecting that for places which are conquered, so that territory people pay 1/4 of tax to the Maratha king. This system of Chauthai, when applied to given territory, turn it into a protected Maratha province, thus extending the Marathas sway over it. This was intended to be a stepping stone to the complete subjugation of these provinces later on. This was an indigenous method of conquest India. With the object of exercising this right to Chauthai, the Marathas began to appear in distinct provinces on the Mughal emperor, such as Bengal and Malwa. And it was apparently to put a stop to such Maratha activities that the Mughal emperor formally granted a sanat, recognized the Maratha right to collect the Chauthai in the Mughal subs of the Deccan, namely Bijapur, Hyderabad, Bidar, Aurangabad, Berar, and Khandesh, and accordingly issued orders to the Mughal governors of these Deccan subas to allow the Marathas to collect Chauthai. Along the Sanat confined the Chauthai collecting activities of the Marathas only to the Deccan subas. For a time, it had no lasting effect of curbing the Maratha zeal for territorial aggrandizement, for before long the Marathas succeeded in applying this system to other provinces of the Mughal Empire as well. So here the sometimes an original inam was introduced. So Chauthai was 1/4 taxes outside of the Maratha state. It's the income of the Maratha state. Then another tax we have to study or concept we have to study in medieval India, that is the Sar Deshmukhi. Sar Deshmukhi was another source of this Shivaji's income. Some territories which accept his supremacy paid him 1/10 of their produce as a token of their having accepted him as their supreme lord. So as regards Sar Deshmukhi, the right to collect it was recognized in Maharashtra since a very early time. When different parts of Maharashtra were first colonized, bring lands under cultivation, Certain hereditary revenue official called Deshmukhs used to collect revenue from the people for the government. By way of remuneration for their services, these officials were allowed to take for themselves a certain percentage, usually 10% of the revenue collected, the remaining 90% paying to the government. So Shivaji claimed for himself the position of the Sir Deshmukh or the head of all the Deshmukhs in his Swaraj, and as such, he came to have the right to collect his remuneration for his office of Sir Deshmukh. And this sum, which was due to the Sir Deshmukh by way of remuneration for his services, was called Sir Deshmukh. The sum of was collected always within the Swaraj, unlike the Chauta, which realized outside the Swaraj. So, Sir Deshmukh's the tax is collected within the territories of Swaraj's authority provinces, but Chauta is outside that Swaraj. Hence, Balaji Vishwanath secured the sanad of Sir Deshmukhi from the Mughal emperor, which gave legal recognition to their right to Sir Deshmukhi, which of course they had been in possession of since a very long time in their own areas. The Mughal governors of these areas were naturally required to respect the sons of their emperor. Then another system we have to, or another concept we have to study in this period, that is called as a Saranjam Shahi. The assignments of Jagirs to the Sardars for maintaining armed forces for the efficient discharge of their duties as members of the confederacy known as Saranjam, and the essence of Saranjams as Saranjanda. While granting the Saranjams to various Sardars, the terms the grant were carefully stipulated in the sanas, which were binding both on the grantor as well as on the grantee. The terms of the grant were that the Saranjamdar should submit detailed accounts of the territory assigned to him in Saranjam, that he should continue the alienations of land and cash, that he should maintain only fit and strong horses, each horse being of the value of 300 to 400, and that he should produce his horses whenever demanded. Saranjam is one type of feudatory system, as we call it as a landlordism system also. Then another good system or some concept related to Ashtapradhana, which comes under Maratha period, but it is very necessary for understanding the concept to Maratha state and Vaishwa's period, Shivaji's period, and their administrative system. So here the Ashtapradhan Mandal, the central government system of the Marathas. Shivaji was the supreme head of his government with all powers, executive, legislative, military, and judicial, concentrated in his hands. A council of 8 members assisted him in the Maratha central administration, that called as a Ashtapradhan system. The minister received new Sanskritized titles and their functions were purely advisory. These 8 ministers means 8 officers helped the Shivaji Maharaj in his administrative system. So that system called as a Ashtapradhan Mandal. The first, the Peshwa, or we call them as the Prime Minister, whose duty was to look after the general welfare and interest of the state. Second, the Amatya, Finance Minister, who was in charge of checking and countersigning all public accounts of the kingdom and other areas under his purview. The Mantri, the state chronicler, who maintained a daily account of the king and his court. He was also known as Okianavis. Then the Sumant or Dabir was the foreign secretary, whose duty was to advise the king on external affairs, war and peace, and affairs in other states. The Sachi or Sarnis, Home Secretary, whose duty was to look after the correspondence of the king. He also checked the accounts of the Paranganas. Then Panditra or Dandadyaksha was the ecclesiastical head, whose duty was to fix dates for religious ceremonies, punish heresy, and distributes alms and charity among the Brahmins. He was the judge of canon law and censor of public morals. The Nyayadish or the Chief Justice was responsible for dispensing civil and military justice. So the Senapati or Sarnavat was the commander-in-chief in charge of recruitment, organization, discipline in the army, he was also responsible for arranging and deploying troops in the battlefield. Then again, another system comes in the medieval period that called as the inams or grants. Details of total land appertaining to village and its revenue assessment are found recorded in the old land records. Land were classified as Bhagati irrigated or Jiarat non-irrigated, depend on rainfall. Four types were further classified as Inam land, produce on which was not taxed. Khalisa land, on which tax was levied. Details are also to be found of how much of Inam land was awarded to which Inamdars holders. So there was no rule or uniformity about how much of the total land would be awarded as Inam. Commonly, some of them Inam land was given to Watandars like the Mukaddama or Patil or Mahar, and others as remuneration for services they rendered to the government, while some was awarded to other persons as hereditary entitlement for various reasons. The inam granted to Watandar was remuneration for their services he rendered to the government. Other inamdars such as hereditary servants of mosques or temples. Hindu or Muslim holy men and physicians were not required to render any service to the government in exchange. Also to be found are a few instances inams granted. So whenever a person do a good work, this land granted to the that person by the ruler. That is called as the price or inam land. Then Deen-e-Ilahi, it's one more concept we find in medieval Indian history. So in 1582, Akbar formed the order of Deen-e-Ilahi, the members of which were asked to observe certain rules. So here Deen-e-Ilahi is a religious thing which was started by the Akbar. Whoever adopted this, some people adopt those principles in their personal life. So the members of Deen-e-Ilahi were further expected to sacrifice property, life, honor, and religion in service of emperor, and that determined the grade of a member within the order. Deen-e-Ilahi did not succeed much, and V.S. Smith has commented that it was a monument of Akbar's folly, not of wisdom. Anyway, but in fact, Deen-e-Ilahi was more a social order than a religious one, which aimed to bring together liberal and like-minded people on a common platform, and Akbar exhibited complete tolerance in propagating it. The vast majority of subjects of Akbar welcomed his religious policy, and that helped in extending his empire and consolidating it. There were many rules and conditions, that's why it was failable. It's a universal religion concept actually, but Hindus and Muslims not adopted this concept. Along with Akbar, this concept was died. Actually, Deen-e-Ilahi religious tolerance policy, but most of it's not liked by the Hindus, it's not liked by the Muslims, because in medieval period, everyone attached too much to their religious concept. That's why universal religious concept not liked by the most of this other community people. That's why he started along with his death, this concept was died. Then Chehelgani. After the death of Iltutmish, conflict arose between the sultans and the slave nobles for sovereign power in the state, which resulted in the killing of the first four sultans and the fifth being reduced to the position of puppet in the hands of Balban. So nobles of Iltutmish were divided in two groups. One is Turkish slave nobles and Tazkis who were not Turks. The Turkish slave nobles who called themselves Sultani formed a brotherhood and a group called Turk-e-Chelagani. The 40 members who helped the emperor of the dynasties, the Delhi dynasties, basically the slave dynasty at that time. That's why the 40 or Chelagani, Chalis. This group of 40 Turk slave nobles first eliminated the power of Tajikis and then tried to capture the power of the state from the lands of weak successor of Iltutmish. But later on it was not success. Balban was abolished this one. Then Shehnai Mandi, what is this concept actually we have to study? Alauddin was an innovator as well as a successful administrator, and he introduced this system. Alauddin was the first Sultan of Delhi who kept a large standing army at the center, started the practice of dak or branding the horses and keeping hulia of the soldiers, brand on horses, dress codes of the soldiers, and he introduced the measurement of land as a preliminary to fixing the state demand of the produce, and the revenue collected by government servants, abolished the privilege of the hereditary revenue officers, and he introduced the market system, and that system called as a Shehnai Mandi. So in Shehnai Mandi, same rate to every grocer and others. If we go to any market in Pune, that is different. In Mumbai, the grocery rate are different. But in the time of the Alauddin Khilji, he introduced the same marketing, same rates. If you go to Agra, if you go to Delhi, if you go to other places, that time, Bihar, that time the same grocery rates, marketing system was, prices are same, not separate one. So that Mandi system was introduced by Alauddin Khilji. So that concept we called a Shehnai Mandi. Still today also Mandi system was marketing system of in India. Then Bhakti movement, when we study Bhakti reformers or Bhakti movement, Sufism, we study detail that one. But here the Bhakti means devotion towards God. It was introduced in medieval period. It started to save themselves from the invention of the Muslims, and they turned towards the spiritual knowledge, and many social evils reform from this Bhakti reformers. The many reformers are there. Ramananda, Vallabha, Nanaka, Chaitanya, Tulsidan. So here the social religious reform started in medieval period, that called as a Bhakti movement. And in Muslim, there is again the religious reform movement started, and that movement we called as Sufism. Sufism started where the Guru is also required. Music is the main thing, and these Sufis are many orders under that. Actually, it's originated in Persia, but it came to India, and these Sufis tried to cultural, religious, social harmony in medieval period among the Hindus and Muslims. Whenever we study Sufism, Bhakti movement, detail we have to study there. Then what was the Mughal state actually? The Mughal state concept is that the Mughal state was a religious base as well as theological state format. Separately, we have to study related to Mughal state, kingship, ruler, administrative system. Here, the Mughal state is a theocracy format, and ruler was the head, and Khalifa was also controlled that one. But except Akbar, the Mughal state is a democratical format we find in medieval period. Again, here the Perso-Arabic system existing in Mughal period, they have mentioned that. Then Mughal kingship also, theory of autocracy under Babur, the idea of divine inspiration under Humayun, the concept of divine origin under Akbar, the imposition of Hindu conviction of divine monarchy under Shah Jahan, and the restoration of Islamic thought under Aurangzeb. From a mere Amir Timur was descended the Pasha Babur, followed by Nehru, Akbar the child of light. So here the Mughal king was supreme head of the executive, army, judiciary, and other things. Some officer appointed there, and they helped the king. So these are the few reference books for detailed understanding of Mughal, Delhi Sultans and Marathas, or Cholas, Vijayanagara Bahmani. You have to study this book for detailed information. Under that, you can refer Herman Kukebu State in India 1000 to 1700. Even you can Nizami book, Sima Alvi book, the 18th century in India, V.D. Mahajan book, also important, Satish Chandra book, medieval India, Irfan Habib, medieval India, give a lot of information about these things. So thank you very much for listening my lecture.